Hi everyone, I'm delighted to have Kevin Knibbs with me this morning. Kevin's the head at Hampton School and also the chair of the HMC Sports Committee. As many of you will know, Kevin always attends our Director of Sport Conference. And last year, following our research that 50% of Director of Sport never see their head, Kevin's put some wheels in motion for us so that we can get that conversation to head. So maybe, Kevin, you could explain how we've been since the conference and the actions that we've put in place.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and morning, everyone. Good to be with you, albeit digitally. Yeah, following the Padgett conference, I was really struck by the results of that survey, and even more so by some of the conversations that I had. That the then chair of HMC, who attended the conference, Sue Woodruff from the grammar school at Leeds, had, and Rachel Owens as well, the vice chair of the sports HMC Sports Committee, who was also at the PADSIS conference. All of us came away and we spoke afterwards, and also with Chris and his PADSIS colleagues, were struck by the need for a bit of a reset in the relationship between lots of HMC member heads and their directors of sport, and a kind of a need to emphasise that the role of the director of sport has undoubtedly changed and transformed in recent times, and that we needed to make sure that heads were properly recognising that and realising that directors of sport are not a standard middle leader in a school. They're very much cultural architects within the school. And there needs to be a better strategic connection in many schools between the head and the DOS. And so off the back of that, we asked Chris and Lorcan O'Brien from GSAL to come to the HMC Sports Committee meeting, summer term meeting at Lord's Cricket Ground, where they gave a really compelling presentation about the need to redefine that strategic relationship. It was a great presentation, but one that was being made to a group of heads who have all volunteered to give up time pro bono to represent different regions of the country on the HMC Sports Committee. So Chris and Lorcan were sort of preaching to the choir, and we decided that what we really needed to do was find an opportunity for them to speak to the wider HMC membership. And that opportunity arose at the recent HMC conference at Celtic Manor down in Wales, where each committee was asked to run a workshop. And so Rachel and I approached the chair of the conference, the current HMC chair, Philip Britton from Bolton School, and said, look, we think it would be more effective to almost run a CPD session for heads, to listen to Lorcan and Chris, and they came down, and we did quite a lot of banging the drum and press gagging almost to get heads to be there in advance. I know Chris did with the PADSIS membership too, and we were pleased that it ended up being one of the best attended sessions among the workshops. I think only the inspection related one had more heads in it. And Lorcan and Chris gave a presentation, and were similarly effective, but with a much wider constituency of heads. So from our point of view, we've really got this dialogue going between heads and PADSIS, and we're keen to build upon that and try and provide some sort of framework for heads to have more effective, more regular communication, better strategic conversations with their directors of sport. I think that's sort of been the
Yeah.
story so far, Chris. More to do, but it's been great to collaborate over this.
And I think, as I said, there were lots of questions, lots of chat afterwards, and I've already received some messages from Director of Sport who've already had emails from their head saying, "Oh, I was at the chat, and I'd like to arrange a meeting with you." So we've had some traction already, which is great. I have shared the presentation with all the PADSIS members on the website, and on it there is, if you like, a leadership framework, six areas for you to have a discussion with your head. I won't go through them now because you will all have received them, and as I say, it's on the website. But I think that is a really good way to start your meetings with your head because, as I say, there is a framework there. Um, and then having spoken to Kevin, we're moving this forward with I'm putting together a document called How to Support Your Director of Sport, and I'm liaising with Kevin and Rachel about that. That I will share with everybody the first week back after half term, and then Kevin, you're going to share with HMC members in the newsletter, and we're going to do a webinar. Do you want to just explain how that's going to work, please?
So obviously we're keen to collaborate on a document that can provide that framework. And so we're just in the process at the moment of exchanging thoughts and ideas about what that might look like. The current draft looks really excellent, and I think will facilitate those conversations, or at least provide a series of useful recommendations for heads about how they might organise that framework and those strategic discussions. And then I think the plan is that when we finalise that draft, I think Chris will send it out to PADSIS members for information, hopefully give you a chance to nudge your respective heads to look out in the following Friday HMC newsletters for not only a link to the webinar for those that didn't attend the workshop, and I know from talking to lots of heads at the conference that even those who couldn't attend were aware that it had been a very insightful and informative session, and are keen to see that recording. And on that same Friday, there will be a link to a digital copy of this guidance document, which will be a joint PADSIS HMC production. And I think that probably gives PADSIS members a great opportunity to organise a follow-up short meeting with the head to discuss their reflections on having hopefully watched the webinar and read the document. I guess our goal, Chris, is that when Rachel and I come back to the next PADSIS conference, which you've kindly invited us to, we'd like to see that rather telling statistic that 50% of directors of sport don't have formal strategic meetings with their head to have fallen considerably. And I'd certainly welcome that if that was the case. Yeah.
And I think just to finish, Kevin, what advice would you give directors of sport in developing this relationship with their head?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are actually at a sort of a bit of a moment of flex, or a bit of a time of paradigm shift in the sector. There's a lot going on at the moment, and I would, my first bit of advice would be, don't underestimate how much your head's contending with at the moment, because I don't think I've known a more sort of volatile period in the sector for all the obvious reasons. But nevertheless, I think what you and Lorcan, to be honest, Chris, have successfully done, and we've tried to help as the sports committee to facilitate, is getting across to more of the HMC members, certainly as heads, that you really need to look after your director of sport, because they are a really key individual within your common room. And although often they're sort of tend to be very robust individuals, and we do need to be mindful of the way in which their role has changed, and that it does need to be probably a different kind of relationship because of that. And I would also say that, you know, I think what we managed to get for, and I think we need to keep articulating this message, is that there is also a commercial imperative to this, because extensive, inclusive sporting provision is undoubtedly one of the key differentiators between our sector and maintained sector competitors in particular. And schools and heads need to embrace the fact that sport, you know, is a really crucial part of their offering. And really they need to redefine the relationship with their director of sport, or a lot of heads do, for mutual benefit. And I think what we want to achieve is a new framework, a better framework for conversations that can be reviewed regularly and around which strategic discussions can be held, because ultimately that will lead to better communication within schools, with parents, with pupils, more effective marketing, hopefully full schools, and ultimately it's going to have a big impact on pupil well-being and happiness at school, which is what we should all be concentrating on all the time. So, I thank you, Chris, that was to embarrass you, and Lorcan, for the time and energy you've put into this. It's been a shared passion and project, I think, really, to try and address that situation that Rachel and Sue and I found pretty shocking at the last PADSIS conference. And the goal, the aim, I suppose, as you would always put it, Chris, the collective win will be if, when we go to the next conference, the situation is improving for more and more of your members, and they are getting into those conversations with their heads.
That's great advice, Kevin. Thanks. And I would just echo that to other directors of sport, that it is always worth just putting yourself in the head's shoes sometimes and realize that obviously we are uber busy, but a head has a lot more on his plate or her plate. So just good bit of advice there. Just imagine what it's like in their shoes as well. But Kevin, thanks very much for your time this morning, and I really do appreciate your support as well in this, because you've really driven this forward and given us the opportunity to put our point of view forward. So hopefully the documents and the webinar after half term will help members. But again, thank you very much. And did you want to say anything before we go, or are you done?
Oh, other than to say good luck with those conversations when
Yeah.
they hopefully start, to your members, and that, I do think you can tell your heads from me that regular dialogue, real shared purpose, real alignment between the values of the sports and PE department and the school are going to really be a defining feature of school culture.
Yeah.
So good luck, and thank you again for having the opportunity to talk to your members. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay. Bye.